So, this woman was peacefully finishing her fancy lunch with friends in Chelsea when she spotted they weren't alone at their table. There was a sewer rat. Hey, welcome to New York. Brooklyn alone houses over 1 million rats. Even luxurious Manhattan is swarming with around 500,000 of them. Overall, around 3 million gray critters are currently munching on the Big Apple. Oh, rats! There used to be untouched land patches that were home to these animals. But with development and construction, they were forced to move into cities and suburbs. It's one of the reasons why the rat population in NYC grew by 800% over the last 65 years. Not only may rats be gross, but they're also seriously dangerous. According to estimates, rats are to blame for 40 to 60% of all bird and reptile extinction. They're now after people. In 2021, 14 New Yorkers were diagnosed with conditions caused by pathogens transmitted by rats, with one of them sadly passing away due to that. Back in the 50s, there were only about 250,000 brown rats in New York. In 2015, it was already 2 million, and today it's 1 million more. These long-tailed New Yorkers have been roaming the city since the 18th century. Rats embarked on ships in Europe and traveled visa-free to the States. Their first stop was supposedly New York City, and they firmly settled down there. The brown rat's lifespan may not be long, only around 2 years, but these creatures are ready to reproduce when they reach the age of 2 months. It only takes them 2 seconds to mate, and they normally give birth to 8 to 10 little ones. Plus, they can have litters around 6 times each year. Well, I'll do the math for you. It means that one single rat can recreate 120 new rats. So, this lightning-speed breeding is another reason for the current infestation. Unfortunately, these critters aren't as adorable as Remy from Ratatouille. They can fight one another, and some of them have missing parts of their tails and eyes. And they've got extremely sharp and hard teeth. Rats can even gnaw through the concrete walls of our houses and destroy our cars with their bites. Their teeth are 5.5 on Moore's scale, which means they're harder than steel and can even be compared to an actual knife. They're also great escape artists. Rats can jump 4 feet across and 3 feet high, and their dugouts normally have 3 exits, the main one and 2 just-in-case ones, which makes them pretty hard to catch. However, seems like one rat didn't escape, causing the Chicago rat hole. It started attracting tourists after a tweet by a comedian went viral in January 2024. The hole was eventually filled in, but later restored by a local. There is a slight chance it might have been a squirrel, but the mass media insists it was indeed the rat. Still, it's not unusual that notorious rat stories appeared in New York City headlines. The first time was in 1860, and 5 years later, the New York Times mentioned that the Big Apple was already getting a notorious reputation for having more rats than any other city in the Union. In 1893, electric trolleys burst onto the scene, kicking those old horse-drawn ones to the curb. So rats had to bounce from their cozy stables where they've been chowing down on grains and set their sights on human residences. It didn't take long for these furry troublemakers to make a beeline for Rikers Island, which was turned into a dumping ground in 1894. Rats even had the audacity to feast on fresh veggies, pigs, and other farm animals at the farm that sprouted on the island later on. Fast forward to the 1930s, when these adventurous rats grew some courage and started swimming to other parts of New York, even finding their way to the fancy neighborhoods of Long Island. But the real panic started in 1997, when estimates claim there were 28 million rats in New York. That was a bit far-fetched, but the real number today looks horrifying either way. Still, even taking into account all those rat superpowers, it might not be very clear why their population has grown that much. The answer can be found in almost any supermarket, and it's a simple plastic bag. They got popular in the 50s, and in 1971, the city introduced plastic trash bags. Before, there used to be metal cans for waste that were pretty hard to get in. But with the appearance of plastic bags, which were super easy to gnaw through, all the trash out there became way more accessible for rats. Plus, a little rat doesn't need much food, just an ounce a day will do. So they were well provided. Climate change took its toll too. Even though rats do not hibernate in winter, A cold climate would slow down their reproductive cycles. However, with warmer temperatures, it got much easier for them to breed, even in the winter. But New York City is really stepping up its game this year. The authorities made some cool changes to prevent garbage from just chilling out on the streets for hours on end. They've tweaked their trash takeout times for both businesses and residents. But that's not all. The Big Apple has also put some rules in place for all food-related spots in town, which is around 40,000 bodegas, restaurants, delis, and grocery stores. Now, they have to dispose of their food waste in secure containers instead of just tossing it in flimsy trash bags on the street. And in Washington, D.C., the authorities allocated $3.4 million for 2024 to start replacing those old bins with newer and bigger ones. In 2022, New York City tried to recruit a rat czar, someone that would be in charge of rodent migration, offering up to $170,000 for the job. The next year, Kathleen Karate was appointed to this position. Now, you may live in the best neighborhood, but there's no guarantee you won't have rats in your house. If you disagree to have such roommates, there are actions you can take in order to prevent this co-living from happening. First, check your foundation for holes and cracks and seal them if you spot any. Second, you're going to need some mesh netting. Place it around all the utility openings that enter your home. These may be gas pipes, electrical boxes, and dryer exhausts. Also, if you live in a house and not an apartment, such a harmless thing as vegetation may also attract unwanted guests. So, your shrubbery should be well trimmed. Otherwise, it risks becoming a bridge for rats, and they'll have access to your house. There are also other things exterminators can do to prevent rat infestations. For example, they sometimes may add glass to concrete when patching holes. But experts say the most effective method to keep rodents at bay is to not share food with them, even unwillingly. It's easy to say, but in New York City, there's trash lined up in the street sometimes, so rats always have access to food. However, if these critters don't have easily accessible food, they'll just look for it somewhere else. And it's not just New York City. Furry critters are causing havoc all over the world. And New Zealand has decided to take on rats in a serious way. They created the Predator-Free 2050 program, aimed at not only kicking out rats, but also putting an end to other pesky invaders like possums and stoats. Big cities across the world are implementing measures to curb the rat population, such as changing trash disposal practices and securing food waste containers. But the problem persists. Rats can squeeze in spaces as thin as a pencil. As long as their skull fits in, they can squeeze in anywhere. So, don't throw away garbage if your bin can't be properly sealed. Also, make sure the bins are clean, as rats are attracted to smells. If the bins in your neighborhood are dirty, contact the authorities. And if yours are dirty, better clean it up, otherwise someone might rat you out. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.